Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Well, it's been a while since I've been able to say that on this channel. My other channel, I managed to get a video out every week this summer. On this channel, I got one video out, I think it was, for this entire summer. Southern Alberta, it was ridiculously windy here up until early summer, possibly even midsummer. Then it got ridiculously hot. Now, I have still been getting out there. I've done a couple trips. I went up and visited one of my daughters, took the van, parked out front of her house and stayed in the van. I made it up to Banff, Lake Louise, and Yoho Park. I've been out kayaking. I've been out biking. I've actually had a good time. Used the van a lot for family get-togethers and family outings, so it's been really nice for that. In this video, I want to talk about something I see asked constantly, and I'm getting tired of replying to all the posts because it seems to be asked over and over and over again. And that is how to keep food cold in a van, in an expedition vehicle, in a vehicle. How to keep it cold. So there's a couple ways. First way is just go out and buy yourself a cooler, put some ice in it, and keep your stuff cold that way. Now, what's the big drawback there? Biggest drawback is you have to keep buying ice. Great for a week, great for a couple days, anything above a week, and you're starting to really push it. The biggest drawback above buying the ice is ice melts and gets everything wet. Now, I've done this. My dad and I used to use a cooler all the time. We came up with a couple tricks that work just wonderful. First one is when you're at home, get some milk cartons, get some ice cream buckets, get some orange juice containers, fill them full of water, freeze them, and then when you leave, put them into your cooler, and when the water melts, it'll stay inside of these units, and then you can just pour them out. Great way to do it. If you're on the road and you're starting to run out of ice, you can always stop somewhere and get some ice cubes, put in those containers, and away you go again. If you want to use blocks of ice that you buy, you can get a plastic container that'll fit the block of ice, and it'll contain the water within that. Works wonderful. And really, that's all you need. But again, it's going to be expensive, and it's going to be a pain to keep finding the ice and draining the ice. So that gets us into the next one. And that is a fridge system that you either plug in to 12 volt, a fridge system that you have propane, 12 volt and 110 volt, or a fridge that you plug into just 110 volts. Now, what are the benefits? What are the drawbacks? The 12 volt one is what I currently have in my van. Greatest thing in the world for what I use it for. Runs off the battery. As long as I have battery power, it runs. It keeps food at a good temperature. It has a cooler or a freezer in the cooler, or I can take the freezer out and make the whole thing either a fridge or the whole thing a freezer. Works great. Works wonderful. It has a door in the front. It works fantastic. Only drawback is you got to make sure you have enough battery power for it, or that you're charging up your batteries on a regular basis. That's the only drawback. The next units. These are the units that have a lot of, there's a lot of hate out there towards them, and I understand it. And that is either your two-way fridge or your three-way fridge. Now, what's a three-way fridge? A three-way fridge is a fridge that runs on propane, 12 volt, and 110 volt. What's a two-way fridge? A two-way fridge runs on propane and 110 volts. And I'm sure that there's probably a two-way fridge out there that runs on propane and just 12 volts. Now, from the 12 volt only fridges to these fridges, the two-way and the three-way fridges, they are a completely different unit. The 12 volt fridges are just like in a house where they have a compressor. You plug it in, the compressor cuts on, it heats up the freon or the coolant inside of it, it pumps it around in the fridge, and it uses 12 volt to do that. The two-way or the three-way fridges actually uses a flame or a heat source to heat up an ammonia mixture. And that ammonia mixture moves around in the fridge once it's heated up. The problem with the two-way and the three-way fridges, the biggest problem is that it always has to be heating up the ammonia mixture, and it uses propane when it's doing it that way. It uses 110 when it's doing that way, Or if you're unlucky enough to have it on 12 volts and you didn't realize it, it uses 12 volts. And it uses all your 12-volt battery power pretty darn quickly. That's the biggest drawback. Now, I've had a couple of these fridges. The first one I had was amazing. It was a really old one. It was a 3-way fridge. I actually disconnected it from the 12 volt so that it wouldn't even go on there if somebody happened to bump the button to turn that on. And I ran it on propane and I ran it on 110. It worked wonderful. It needed no power whatsoever when it was on propane. Zero power. It didn't use it could run just on propane and needed nothing else. It was a great unit. Worked great when it was plugged into 110 as well. The problem was when I first got it, it was on 12 volt, and every time I put a battery onto it, my low battery alarm came on within about 5 minutes because the thing was sucking the power from the 12 volts like crazy. So for that, I didn't like it. Then I got a 3-way system that had an automatic switchover feature to it. And what it was you would turn on the propane, and if you would plug it into 110, it would shut the propane off and use the 110. It had a manual switchover to go to 12 volt because they knew how bad it drained the 12 volt system. That fridge worked wonderful as well. In fact, that was the coldest fridge that I've had in an RV. It was insanely cold and it worked great. But that one required 12 volt power to operate. Even if it was just running propane, it needed 12 volts for the thermostat. It needed 12 volts to ignite the flame. It needed 12 volts for a lot of the operation. The first fridge I had, the first 3-way, it needed only propane when it was on propane, only 110 when it was on 110, and if you were, again, foolish enough, only 12 volts when it was on 12 volts. Now, the 2-way and the 3-way fridges get a lot of bad rep. And why is that? Because if you don't keep them level, they will start to fail. They need to be kept level 75% of the time. Anytime you park for over a couple hours, they have to be kept level. If you're driving, not a big deal. You can drive up a hill, you can drive down a hill, you can drive on an angle, you can drive on the other angle. Not a big deal. They will continue to work. But if you park for a long time and they're not flat, they will start to fail. Now, the one in my first truck camper, when I bought it, was 12 years old. So, how fast do they fail? Well, I have a feeling that the person who had my truck camper before me didn't make sure it was level all the time. And I didn't for the first little while, and it still ran amazing. So I'm not going to say it's going to fail after a day of being off level or 2 days, but it will start to fail. Now, other drawbacks? Well, the biggest drawback for me to go with a 2-way or a 3-way is in my van, I don't have a propane system. So why would I want to go with a system that I'd have to attach into the van, drill holes in the side of the van, drill roof vents in the roof, hook up a propane system to run it? Whereas I can use a 12-volt fridge and it does everything by just plugging it in. So, benefits and drawbacks. Now, the last one I'm going to talk about, I really didn't want to address, but I see it so often. And that is people who go and they buy a small bar fridge, they plug it into 110, they get it cold, then they hit the road, and then they plug it into 110 the next night, and then they hit the road, and then they plug it into the next night. Now, technically, will it work? Yes. But, and here's a big but, you always have to make sure that you have 110 plug-in. In the nighttime when you pull in someplace, or if you're leaving your van for a few hours and it's insanely hot, you should probably plug it in because it has no way of keeping itself cool. Now, I know people who do it. I know people who say it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. To me, it just seems like you're asking for trouble. I even know a couple people who have them on inverters, mainly in buses, but some people have them in smaller vans, and one I know even has his in a truck camper, and they say that it's great to run on their inverter. I just don't see it. I see it sucking a lot of battery power unnecessarily, whereas you could go and buy a very good 12-volt fridge of either the chest type or the regular fridge type, and away you go from there. Or if you don't want to invest hardly any money, just go out and get yourself a cooler and use that. So until next time, have a great day. I'm going to get out there and go for a bike ride tonight and enjoy the cooler weather. And then hopefully this weekend, I'm actually going to hit the road and go out and do some kayaking. So until next time, have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Get out there and enjoy the great outdoors. Bye-bye now.